Well, with all that said, let's go ahead and get into things. So, for everybody who does not know, this is Brooke2Valley, though I'm not going to waste any time introducing her. I know a lot of you probably know who she is, but for those of you who do not, Brooke, would you like to introduce yourself and talk a little bit about what you do?
Hi, my name is Brooke2Valley. I make comics about my experiences with transitioning, namely about the social aspects of it. I don't talk so much about the self-perception changes, although I do a little bit. But yeah, I've been transitioning for almost a year at this point. 6 more days, and it will be a year. But yeah, I'm 22 years old, and I guess that's me.
You guess. We're making a lot of assumptions there. I'm kidding.
I'm pretty sure that that's me.
Fairly certain. You said that you don't talk about the internals as much, but then I'm like, but I saw the Blahash arc. If that's not an internal struggle, I don't know what is.
No. I mean, I talk about like the social issues and internal struggles. I mean, like internal perception of how I don't talk about like the changes that HRT has made very often.
Yeah.
I'm more
that's understandable.
Stuff. Yeah.
Well, I imagine that also works out for making comics, because when you're putting characters into comics, being able to bounce off of the characters, it kind of necessitates talking about the social side of it more often than not anyway.
Exactly. Yeah.
So that does beg the question, though, what got you started drawing comics about your experience? And was this your first foray into doing comics, or did you have any other projects that you did prior to that?
So when I started making comics, I had recently gotten kicked out of the house where I was living with my parents.
Oh, geez.
And yeah, I was homeless at the time, and I had created a Discord profile picture with the character just because, I wanted to change what I could. And then I was watching One Topic. I had been watching One Topic, and I was like, you know what? I'm going to make some memes and stuff and post them on Egg IRL. And I made some basic memes. And then one day I just drew a comic, and people liked it a lot. And I made other ones about experiences that I was having, and people kept, relating or whatever. And I was really enjoying drawing them. So I just continued. And
you just kept on at it.
Yeah. And as for have I ever done comics before? I've never done comics, but when I was younger, I really wanted to be a storytime animator. And so I did some of that. I learned some basic animation stuff, and that's why my art style is the way it is, where it's really simplistic and stuff, was because I could draw it pretty quickly.
Because a lot of it's that story time animation style where they want to be able to make something that looks good but can still be produced rather quickly, so that they can get stuff out for the algorithm. That's kind of how that style's designed to function.
Exactly.
Yeah.
No, I didn't go with the basic circle head or whatever. I still wanted it to kind of look like the Cal Art style or whatever. But yeah, that's how we got to where we are today. And yeah.
Hey, fair enough. Well, it's definitely sucks that the instigation for drawing a lot of this was something as traumatic as being kicked out of the house, but it's definitely good that you've done with it what you have. I know that when I posted on my channel the thumbnail that you drew for us, just about the response to it was not, "Oh, who is this?" The response to it was, "Oh, you're having Brooke on." You're a very known name in a lot of these circles, which is certainly something to say for yourself after having such a negative experience started.
Yeah, it's kind of been crazy. It's nowadays I'll join a LGBT/trans related Discord, and I'll say something and people will already know who I am. It's
a weird experience. It's one that takes some getting adjusted to. So there's a friend of mine. I went to a convention to go see USA, and her manager when USA introduced the two of us, her manager just looked at me and was like, "I know who you are." It was like, "Oh, is that threatening or am I don't know how to feel about this." Like,
Yeah.
so I know the feeling. It's a weird adjustment. It's a very
Yeah,
weird
actually,
adjustment.
I will say I have only met one person in real life who knew about my comics,
Mm-hmm.
and I like not met this other person in real life, but I knew somebody who knew a person, and then like through the grapevine found out that they already knew about me, which was kind of interesting.
Oh,
It's weird how social circles end up like that.
it's a much smaller world than we think it is, especially when we navigate. I guess you'd call them terminally online spaces. There's fewer people in those spaces than we think, so word spreads quicker than most people are able to. As in my chat actually says that you're a role model to them, which is kind of neat. Looks like a lot of people are pointing out that it's the hair clip in your hair that everybody can recognize as well. Like that's the protagonist trait that you have at the moment.
Yeah, actually, it's kind of weird, but I kind of did like the whole Mickey Mouse thing where it's like, it's not always this way, but I kind of want it always to be in view as long as my head is in view.
Yeah.
So that's why it's like, it's on both sides of the head, no matter which way I'm facing.
So the same as the Mickey Mouse silhouette.
Yeah, the ears are always facing you so that you've got the whole thing.
Huh. That sounds like something we need to have a discussion about.
Don't sue me, Disney.
I've sued people for less. Anyway. I guess the next question would be, can you describe what your drawing routine is like? I know that so the reason I ask is my community is filled to the brim with artists. Most of the people who I ended up hiring for commission work to do stuff on my channel officially all basically started as people who did fan art, and then I went like, hey, that was a cool thing you did. Could I pay you money to do it again? So I know there's probably a lot of people who are going to ask, like, how often do you draw? How many hours a day do you focus on drawing? And how do you tend to break up your days when you are trying to draw? Because you have a very noticeable and distinct art style. There's a lot of people who probably want to know about your routine.
Yeah, sure. So for me, when I'm like actually working on stuff and it's like I'm in a good place or whatever, I'm going to be posting about 3 times a week, which means that generally I'm drawing every other day, if not every day. But it's not intense or whatever. Like a lot of times when I say I post 3 times a week, sometimes people will be like, oh, that's a lot. Are you sure you want to do that? But it doesn't take me that long to actually make a comic. Because the art style is fairly simple. It takes me like 2 hours if I'm not doing anything special with it. And the main problem is just like having those social interactions to talk about. But yeah, currently right now I'm not doing so much because I am taking somewhat of a mental health break. Just because, you know, you don't want to constantly be on the treadmill, just pumping out all the time.
No, you don't. I recently took a trip to Florida with Saki because I was not only feeling the burnout, but feeling like the overwhelming feeling of, oh, I've got all this stuff on my plate that needs to get done. And it robs you of any enjoyment you have in producing content if you're always on that treadmill. So I get that.
Exactly. Just need a little bit of time. What I'm doing currently is like I'm posting one of my old comics that I don't have up on my Tumblr every day, so that I'm slowly getting them out there, but like, you know, I'm not having to work on it necessarily. But I mean, I still enjoy drawing. I just, yeah. But when I'm ready and I'm working on a comic, I just sit down and I get out my phone and I open Autodesk and I just start right there.
Oh, Oh, well, fair enough. So you do most of your drawing on your phone?
I do all my drawing on my phone.
I can't fathom that. So I say that knowing there's a lot of people in my community, like Axolotls with Cream, who actually recently made a Magic the Gathering playmat for my partner Saki. Her or them and most of the other people in my community, a lot of them use phones for drawing, and I just can't. I can't. It feels like such a small, tiny workspace to do that in, but it's amazing that y'all can do that.
For me, I guess the appeal is like I've worked with a drawing tablet before, and for me, the appeal of a phone over a drawing tablet is that like I can use my fingers and twist the canvas around on my phone. I can like go at it from different angles, whereas if I'm on a drawing tablet, it's single line orientation, so that
so it's closer to like it's closer to manipulating a regular sheet of paper for you.
Exactly, yeah, and so it's easier for me even if the screen is smaller.
I guess that's fair. Does that mean that like when you say a drawing tablet, you mean like one of the ones that you connect to a PC, or like a Galaxy Tab or an iPad that has an art program on it?
The one I used to have was one you connected to a PC.
Okay. So I guess like in future, if somebody were to say try to fund or gift you a large tablet that could run a good art program on it, so that you could do art that way, is that something that you would try?
Oh yeah, I'd definitely try that. I used to draw on an iPad, so I can't imagine I would imagine that's at least a similar experience-ish.
I would imagine so. It's just so working with such a small canvas size, I can imagine that it's like being able to zoom in on it makes it to where it's not quite as bad. But I don't know. It feels like one of those things where having other technology available would certainly make it to where you could do bigger pieces, you could expand more out, just having access to more things. But again, I've only done a very, very small amount of drawing on my channel, enough to realize actually I don't enjoy this that much, but I do talk with my artists a lot, and hearing about the different types of tech that they prefer using makes me just kind of wonder, like, hey, if somebody were to do that, what would pieces like that look like? What kind of stuff would you be able to create that you might not be able to do as easily right now? Because I don't know how limiting the phone environment actually is for you.
I mean, it's not super limiting, although I guess I can't really judge because that's pretty much what I've done most of the time that I've been drawing.
Mm-hmm.
So, I guess I don't know what I don't have.
That's understandable. You don't feel it's like a third limb almost. You can't imagine what it would be like to have a third limb because you're so used to having, two limbs.
Yeah.
Arms specifically, not like extra legs. I think that would get kind of cumbersome.
I'm seeing some people bring up like pressure sensitivity, and that actually is an issue.
Mm.
With my phone, obviously, I can't really do pressure sensitivity, which is why my lines tend to look pretty uniform.
They just end up being all uniform hard lines.
Yeah.
I guess that's fair. I think that's something that a lot of the newer iPad models can actually handle pressure sensitivity with their pens. So that might be an angle for going in there at some point. Who knows?
Yeah, that's true.
But since we are talking about the art process, that does beg another question. A lot of artists who I've talked to, hired, been friends with, a lot of them tend to be perfectionists when it comes to their own work. So that begs the question, how much revision and editing do you tend to do on your own work? Because the comics and stuff are stuff you're doing for you. They're not necessarily like things that are being commissioned out, so you don't have deadlines other than ones you set for yourself. So how finagly are you with perfectionism there? How many times do you edit your stuff?
It really depends. Like, I will say there have been times where that I'll draw something and obviously like I'll redo the line on like the jaw or something a couple times just so it doesn't look weird.
Hmm.
But sometimes the standard is I want it to at least look good and to style, but it's not like that big a deal. But then there are also comics where that I've decided that what I'm talking about is really important to me,
Hmm.
and if I do that, then I'm spending like days on that comic, and I will be revising it until it is perfect.
You just kind of sit
Um,
there staring at it, and in the dead of night, you're thinking about the next bit of line work you have to do.
yeah, like I did one comic where it was about like this. I have a sad comic where I'm in my room and I'm like crying and stuff, and that was one that I worked really hard on. And so it's not perfect, obviously, because you can't exactly get perfect,
Hmm.
but I worked really hard on it. And then I've got another comic where that I'm visiting my friend Danny in her town, and it's very supportive and stuff. And I worked on that comic for 3 days in order to get like all of the perspectives correct, all of the lighting to look really pretty.
Hmm.
I did the thing where that I don't use black lines, I used color lines in order for everything to like look different, and it took a long time, but I really liked the way it came out. And so that's kind of how I standardize it. It's like I want to be able to post fairly frequently. So most of the time I have like a baseline standard, but if it's an important topic, then I'm going to be like upping that standard way higher.
That's understandable. When you so you basically have a set of categories in your head almost, where if something's in category 1, it can be a little more quick and dirty, but if something's in category 2 or 3, then you need to spend a lot more time revising it, basically. And you just kind of make that determination before you sit down to start a piece, what kind of piece it's going to be, I imagine.
Yeah, exactly.
Yep.
And I'll just like mentally prepare myself for it too. I might, when I was working on the really long one where it took like 3 days, I actually had a comic prepared to go ahead and post in the meantime
Hmm.
so that like I wouldn't be like missing one of my post days or whatever. And
Hmm.
I mean, it was a lot of fun. It was a lot of fun for me. I listened to, honestly, I actually listened to a lot of political streamers while I was doing it.
That
Probably
sounds like
you,
a
Con.
drawing on your mental health.
Eh, I like political streamers.
That's understandable. I have a couple of friends who will like they'll send me a message like apologizing, going, I haven't been able to watch a lot of your recent content because it's been just so much or so draining, and I'm just like, bruh, it's fine. What? It's okay.
Yeah,
So
I mean,
I'm used to hearing that, like, hey, this thing is much.
yeah, I mean, that's fair. Typically, I try to like keep up at least somewhat with what's going on, but
Hmm.
there have been times that I've had to just lay off of it and just, look up video essays on stuff.
You just look at you find a 2 hour long video essay, and you just click it on, and like, I don't even care what they're talking about. I just want to hear them talk.
Yeah, it's like the history of Mario speedruns.
Oh my! So I actually ended up going through one of those histories of Mario speedruns, the one on the Mario Sunshine speedruns, which I didn't care about the topic at all, but I was just fascinated
Yeah, I
by
mean,
looking
it's
at
really
all the different
cool.
ways people were exploiting that game.
Yeah, I mean, it's really cool. You're just like, I don't know how you guys figured this out, but good for you.
So just watching somebody go, okay, how can I break this part of the game where I'm running a watermelon down a track and I fuck it up every 12 seconds? How can I make this not a pain in the butt? I'm just like, you know, 5-year-old me would love to use some of those tricks because I remember being angry at that game sometimes.
Yeah, I actually really like it when somebody makes like a learning AI and then sets it to learn the fastest way, and then they
Mhm.
try to replicate the way the AI did it in their own speedrun.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, it's not as magical, I guess, but it's also just really cool to me because I know nothing of AI.
That's fair. I know that there's one of the things that used to get me was before I knew what a task was, the tool-assisted speedrun tools.
Mm-hmm.
I had no idea what those were, so I would watch task runs going, there is no way this is humanly possible, without realizing that, like, a lot of those things actually were not technically humanly possible.
Yeah, it's just if you were literally a machine, you could do it.
God, I remember, speaking of like those long video essays, there was a compilation video on the history of every Bomberman game and the lore associated with them. And I ended up watching the whole thing. I don't know how I managed that, but I did.
Yeah, it's kind of crazy. I think the last video essay that I watched, or rather listened to, was a brief look at Harry Potter. And it's
I know.
Yeah, and it's like 10 hours long, and I had to like break it up over a couple of days.
So, fun thing about that, I believe that was Lily, right, that did that one?
Yeah, I was trying to think of the name of the channel, but I couldn't.
Yeah, so her channel used to go by a different name, but they prefer that name not be uttered now because of some drama associations that happened with it, which is fair. But I remember they had a Twitch channel that they used to do stuff on all the time, and they were doing a charity. I don't remember what the charity was for. I think it was Trevor Project, but it's been years now. And they were doing a reading of a lemon between Steven Crowder and Ben Shapiro. And she wanted somebody who could do an Alex Jones impersonation to do the voice of the narrator. And somebody on Twitter was like, Suris does a good Alex Jones. So, so I actually hopped on her stream, did the Alex Jones impersonation for the narration of it, and somebody dropped $3,000 towards the charity during that stream.
That's crazy.
So now I can make the joke that I have a $3,000 Alex Jones impression.
I actually love that.
It was just one of those. It was one of those weird moments. I'm like, huh, that's a thing that happened in my life. I can keep that forever.
Yeah. I mean, that's really interesting.
Surprisingly though, I haven't actually seen the brief look at Harry Potter video that they made. I haven't seen it yet.
It's honestly pretty good. I would suggest it. Although, I didn't do this, but maybe watch it on 125 or whatever. But
maybe watch it on 125.
1.25 speed.
Oh, to speed it up, just because after 10 hours, that's like cutting an hour off the total runtime, which is still significant.
Yeah. I listened to it on the normal speed when I was listening to it, but that was just because I was listening to it while I was at work. So.
Oh.
Yeah, not my time.
Axo said, "What's a lemon?" And Loki goes, "An old way to refer to smut and sex scenes." And Axo just goes, "Oh, so it's just Suris being old." Shut up! I am not that old. 31.
You refer to it in the way that feels right. And just clarify if you have to.
Jesus Christ. Also, for people who are doing the redeems, just know that when I've got a guest on, I'm not going to do redeems until afterwards, out of respect for the guest. So, for everybody who keeps on doing redeem stuff, I'm not ignoring you. I'm just ignoring you.
This is the definition of ignoring somebody.
Exactly.
When you see it, but you don't do anything about it.
Yeah. I'm not hashtag ignoring you. I'm quotation marks ignoring you.
I think the weirdest thing that's happened to me so far with streaming and comics and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And I think this is the name of the person, but I got a DM on Twitter from Mark Hammond, and I was being asked if I wanted to be a part of the stream. What is a woman on Twitter with with all of the transphobes and stuff.
Oh, that sounds like a not fun experience.
Yeah, I'm actually drawing a blank on who was the guy who made the documentary.
Matt Walsh.
Yeah, with Matt Walsh and stuff. And I declined, obviously, but it was very interesting to be invited to that kind of stream.
You're just like, do I want to walk into the lion's den and hear a bunch of people tell me that my existence is bad and I should die? No, I don't think I want to do that. That sounds like a not fun time.
Yeah, I was like, honestly, what was going through my head was like, for one, I'm not really gonna be allowed to speak all that much. And then for two, afterwards, I'm just gonna get like bombarded with harassment for the next month and a half.
And everything you say is going to be clipped out of context so that people can weaponize it against you till the end of time.
Exactly. So,
yep.
I just avoided that, you know.
Yeah, I would too. I'm a cishet white guy, and I still would avoid that shit.
Mm-hmm.
Just sounds like a not fun time.
But yeah, other than that, I haven't had too many weird things happen. Just, stuff like that.
So, when you're making your art and you're bringing in your real life experiences into everything, I did want to know how many of the comics do you do are just a 1-for-1 of the experiences, and how many of them are exaggerating experiences or downplaying experiences a little bit?
I would say exaggerating or downplaying isn't necessarily the right word.
Mm-hmm.
I would say that I try to approximate the experience because I'm trying to fit them usually into 3
into a 4-panel webcomic.
5, yeah. Like I don't have like a set thing, but I try to keep it short. And so I try to get the same vibe of what was said down into a small amount of space.
Mm-hmm.
I will say some.
I guess paraphrasing is probably a better word than downplaying.
Yeah, exactly. I would say like there have been times where that I've experienced stuff and it's not exactly how I put it in the comics. Like, for example, when I was talking, I did a comic where I was talking to a guy, and he was saying he knew one other person who claims to be trans, and I asked him for clarification, and he explained that this person doesn't take medication or really present all that much. And I was like, nobody has to prove that they're trans, like
there's not a threshold of transing you have to do.
Exactly. And I just drew us in like normal clothes in an open setting or whatever. The reality is that we were at work and I was in my uniform and stuff. But it's just like I change things so that parts that are relevant are shown and parts that, aren't relevant, I can just kind of ignore. Because I've discovered that if you add a detail that's not important, people tend to ask about the detail that's not important.
So you just keep it to only the bits that you think matter.
Exactly. And I haven't always done perfect with that. Like there have been a few times where I've had to like clarify in the comments to people about certain things. But I think that like most of the time I get it all right.
I think I've had that experience because I've got a lot of friends who were trans. I had to go to Florida to rescue Arachne, who's trans as well, and because of being homeless, she was not able to go on HRT at all because when you're homeless, your priorities are not die. Like that's where everything kind of sits. You're trying to survive in the lovely world of DeSantis, which doesn't work very well sometimes.
Exactly.
So I've seen that happen where people just go like, no, that's not a real trans person. They haven't had the surgery. So just like, well, hold on. Like, what's the threshold? Where is the line that somebody has to cross to be valid to you? Like, sometimes people are in a situation literally like what she was in, where you can't be on medication yet. You can't go and talk to a doctor. You can't even talk to a therapist because it's just not in the cards when everything else is a priority.
Exactly. And I feel like I've like talked to a bunch of people about this sort of thing before. And like, I've had to explain to some people that it's actually, for most people, really difficult to get HRT. Like, for me, it wasn't that hard because I just like, I mean, there is one difficulty where I can't get it in my state, but I'll like drive over to the next state and get it.
Mm-hmm.
But I just go to like Planned Parenthood and they get it. But for a lot of people, it's just not that easy. There's a bunch of other stuff that they have to jump through hoops over and stuff.
I actually am going to take this moment real quick to throw something out there to people who are in my audience who might not know. Because I had to do some of this research for Saki, because Saki was under Alaskan Medicaid when we started dating. And of course now she's in Georgia, which means she can't do that anymore. So we had to do some research to figure out how to go about getting her HRT. And what I found, thanks to Brianna Wu, actually, helped me out with this. If you use Plume, for anybody who's in my audience who's trying to figure out, like, how are you going to get your medications, Plume will actually get you your prescriptions so that even if you don't have health insurance, you can still technically talk to a physician. They can give you your prescription for HRT, and then what you would do is you take that prescription and you go to Amazon and use Amazon's mail-in pharmacy, because they will actually take prescriptions and then mail you your stuff, and you can have them send that to your house so that you don't actually have to get up and go find a physician who's willing to give you the stuff that you need. There's networks that have been built now specifically to assist trans people with these issues, because it is getting harder and harder to get access to HRT in the United States. So I did want to, since we're on that topic, I wanted to throw that out there for people who might not have known yet.
No, yeah, I'll actually keep that in mind, because I get asked in like DMs and stuff constantly how to acquire it, and I can just kind of, I have to usually, like, if I'm able to figure out something with them, we have to like work through their options first. But yeah, I'll keep that in mind. I didn't know that.
Yeah, I had no idea about it either, because, I mean, again, like, it's not part of the experience that I've had to worry about, because I'm cis. I just have to worry about regular health issues that come up because I'm aging, not anything like that. So it was really, really helpful to have that information handed to me when I was like, hey, I'm about to have to go run across the country, and there's going to be problems that come up as a result of that here. Can I get help fixing those problems, please? So that was super helpful when I found that out. So I figured, hey, we're on the topic. There's probably a lot of people in my audience who didn't know about Plume and didn't know about any of the options they had for like mail-in pharmacy stuff that's been established now. But I guess that does bleed in, because you mentioned the comment you got from the guy wanting you to hop onto the stream about the what is a woman garbage. So I guess that does beg the question, do you tend to get a lot of harassment online? Like, how, if you have, where does most of that come from?
Kind of hard question to answer, because like, not really. I don't get just a ton of harassment. In fact, the most harassment I ever got was from the trans medicalist, community. But the only other example that I can really think of is like, there were a few times where I've gotten some harassing comments or DMs and I just block the person and it ends it there. And then there was one time where it was linked to a 4chan page, and there were like some really distasteful artworks of either my character or like approximations of like me,
Mm-hmm.
like that kind of Nazi propaganda kind of looking stuff.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Yeah. But other than that, just like not really.
Huh. I guess that's kind of a strange. It's kind of a strange situation then, because while you haven't received a lot in quantity, the kind you have received has been very, very, very specifically targeted.
Yeah, I it's kind of weird. But usually it comes and it's there for like maybe 2 or 3 days, and then it's gone, and I don't have to deal with it anymore. So
that's kind of what my experience was with Eric July when he tried to. Because I commented on one of his videos saying that it's, you know, okay for medication and therapy and stuff like that to be available for people who are under the age of 18. And he used that as an opportunity to, you know, call me a pedo, call me a groomer, all that other fun stuff that they like to throw out there. And he's got a large following, so I had like a week of harassment from that, and then it just disappeared. It just went into the aether.
yeah.
So I guess it's good-ish, kind of, sort of, to find out that that's kind of the experience across the board. A campaign begins and then it disappears and you just as quickly forget it happened.
Yeah, it's like people get upset and then they just forget because they move on to the next person that made them mad.
They can't be angry at multiple things at the same time because their attention spans won't allow for it, I guess.
Exactly.
The Twitter drama cycle. What are we mad about today, guys? What are we angry about today?
Yeah. And honestly, it's kind of been interesting because, like, even in real life, I haven't received that much harassment. Like, I have some, not lately, but like towards the beginning of transition, I definitely did receive some, but I definitely expected it to be more because, like, I don't know if this is well known or little known, but I live in Alabama, so it's like it's one of those southern states, you know.
I live in Georgia. I get it.
Yeah, it's like I kind of expected it to be bad, but it wasn't as bad as I was actually expecting. So, you know,
could be worse. Could be Texas.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, it could be Texas or could be Florida, God forbid.
I do plan on leaving Alabama, but for now, that's where I'm based. So
I understand the feeling. I am. Though, if you are in Alabama, I have family that lives there. There is a card. I don't know if you do any card games at all or tabletop.
I don't really, but you can continue.
There is a absolutely amazing, like, nerd mecca almost in Mobile, Alabama, called Games and Geeks, and I know that those words in that order is going to be triggering for some people in my audience because they're going to think immediately Geeks and Gamers, but no, not them. It's called Games and Geeks, and apparently they were big enough to have their own conventions just within their building. But they are... When I was visiting down there, me and Saki walked in and immediately put it on our list of, like, places we're going to visit every single time we go to Alabama. So if you ever get a chance to go to Mobile, definitely check out that place. It is huge, and it is filled with all kinds of, like, PC gaming stuff, console gaming stuff, anime stuff. It's got everything, and it's fantastic.
Oh yeah, I'll definitely check that out. Like, that sounds really cool. I like geek stuff, even if I'm not, like, I'm actually not really a part of that many fan bases. But I love interacting with media and stuff, so that's awesome.
Go find yourself falling down a rabbit hole of Steven Universe AMVs.
I mean, I used to actually be a part of the Steven Universe fandom. Not so much anymore. but I definitely developed some of my style from Steven Universe.
It shows a little bit. It shows a bit.
Yeah.
But not in a bad way.
Yeah. Actually, on the PC thing, I very recently got my first PC.
Oh.
So, yeah. I've been playing Minecraft.
Behold, I have an incredibly powerful machine capable of running all of the finest video games. What are you going to play? I don't know, SNES emulators in Minecraft?
Exactly. One of the first things I did was booted up Minecraft and played it without Optifine.
It's like, I don't have to optimize it now. I can just play it. It's fine.
Mhm.
It runs. It's okay.
Yeah.
So, you have a lot of comics that you've released now, especially since your production line basically has them coming out, twice to 3 times a week. So that begs the question, do you ever plan on making a physical copy for people to buy anytime?
I mean, it kind of depends. Like, it would be cool to. I don't know how well my comics would translate to that kind of thing, but it would definitely be cool to. But I don't have any particular plans for it now.
That's understandable. Just feels like one of those things that, getting a hardbound page by page where each page is just one of the 4 panel spreads would be kind of neat.
It would definitely be cool if I had it myself, just so one day in the far future when I'm not doing this anymore and stuff, I can just pull it off the wall and be like, I did that.
Yeah. Roger's is like an omnibus. Yeah, exactly like an omnibus. Exactly like an omnibus.
Yeah.
So I guess that bleeds into the next question. Do you, especially since you're using the Cal art style, do you plan on making any type of animated content, or do you already have any that you've done before?
I have animated before, not with my current character, but I would love to make animations. I have a few, I don't know if I would say not animation memes, because that has an entirely different connotation, but memes that are animated, I guess.
Okay.
That I want to do. And then I don't know, maybe at some point I'll do some serious stuff. Actually, do you mind if I bleed over into a different topic with this a bit?
Sure.
So I actually want to start a secondary comic series, and it's still about trans stuff, but currently I talk about my experiences with transition and stuff, and just it's started since I was 21 and up until now, and that's the experiences that I typically talk about. Of course, occasionally I talk about being a kid or whatever, but it's very, I guess the word would be episodic and sporadic, and I'd like to make something a bit more serialized and make a comic about my childhood and how I went from kind of being in a conservative household where that all of this stuff was very closed off, and I couldn't have any access to it, to slowly realizing my identity and my views or whatever. Just something more serialized and serious and more representative of my experience as a child or whatever.
Basically a comic book that is a comic book biography. A comic book autobiography is basically what that sounds like.
Yeah, exactly. Now, obviously, it wouldn't be a one-to-one where it's every experience and every experience that I show is exactly the same. That's not really possible, but I can do a broad storytelling thing and kind of lens it to show what I'm trying to get across. But yeah.
I mean, I know that I would definitely read it. That actually sounds perfect for a webtoon series.
Currently, I call the episodic comics, although I guess not a lot of people know this, but the episodic ones I call Brooke with the E, and it's, kind of a pun because I spell my name Brooke, Brook, and then E, and you can spell it without an E, but it's Brooke with the E. but also I take estradiol, which people call E. So it's like, it's all just a joke that kind of pours into itself. And then
Gotcha.
I would call, I don't know exactly what I'm going to call the other comic, but I am considering just calling it Trans Girl of the Valley or something like that. Or The Valley is another one that I just thought.
I think
I don't
maybe
know.
the Valley probably sounds like the best one, because like this is just me thinking from the perspective of talking with a lot of people who've had very, very eggy experiences growing up, we'll say. Definitely having a comic that's titled The Valley so that it can go super under the radar for people who don't know what it's about, but people who are in the know, people who know you, and people who are there for that experience, they pick it up, they start reading it, and they start putting together, oh, this is a conversation about transitioning. This is an episodic serial about a person's experience going through this, but the actual title of it isn't in your face. It just has a nice, smooth, very marketable style of title.
Yeah, exactly. And, you know, it's something that it's still recognizable. It still stays to, I kind of hate using this terminology, but it still sticks to my brand or whatever. But it's kind of just like, and also it's the valley. When people are saying like there are peaks and valleys, I typically don't associate my childhood with like this great time in my life. So I could say
it was your valley.
Yeah, exactly.
No,
so
that works out.
Yeah.
Well, definitely, I think that would be an interesting thing for people who are already fans of you to look through, and I think that would also be a wonderful introduction for people who are not quite experienced with transmedia, for instance, because let's be honest, there's really not a whole lot of it, all things considered, and most of it tends to be decently political itself. So definitely having something there that people can pick up, read, and then kind of discover that side of themselves through, or even just figuring out that, hey, maybe sometimes it's better to just be yourself as opposed to what your parents think the idea of yourself is, whether that's being trans or not. That's a type of story that could speak to them, probably.
Yeah, exactly. One thing that I have had to do and consider is that, like, for all intents and purposes, I'm not exactly a writer, so I have had to like discuss certain things with friends and people I know who are writers, so that like I don't do anything that's just gonna ruin the entire vibe and like make it unbearable to read. So it's something that I'm working on, but
you don't want to fall into Control-Alt-Deleteism.
Exactly. I don't want to like spend 5 days working on something and then realizing it doesn't work.
That would be a loss. Somebody's going to be very angry about that pun. Are you okay?
I'm good.
There's the anger in my chat. It's beginning. It's beginning. So, speaking of that, when you were growing up, or when you were deciding to do what you do now, did you read a lot of comics as inspiration? Like, you've got a very recognizable paneled style of content that's similar to a lot of older webcomics. Did any of them inspire you to make work the way you do now?
I would say probably two, mainly. One that I read a lot when I was younger was The Trans Girl Next Door.
Okay.
I wouldn't suggest necessarily looking at her stuff now because she's kind of shifted and it's not exactly, I don't know, but her older stuff is more related to trans experiences and stuff. Like when I say that, I mean, if you're looking for comics about trans experience, I wouldn't necessarily look into it now, but before it was about that and stuff, and I read it a lot when I was younger. And I would say in terms of like how I like to format it and like ideal probably Shen Comics, honestly. Some of his
Shen
older
Comics?
stuff. Yeah, Shen Comics or Owl Turd or whatever.
I haven't actually heard of them. Let me see here.
Dude with like the red hair, wearing a hoodie, blue jeans, has like buff guys representing life, anxiety, depression, and stuff like that.
Oh, yup. I recognize him now. Yup. No, I just Googled him real quick and like, oh wait, no. Yeah, no, I've seen his stuff everywhere.
Yeah, I liked him a lot when I was younger, and I still like his stuff now, but I don't check it out as often as I used to. But yeah, I would say, like, even if it's not necessarily on purpose, I would like it if I was a bit closer to his style, but I'm not exactly a comedy comic or whatever.
No, you've got a very, these are my lived experiences, #relatable style of comic, as opposed to the fourth panel makes you laugh because the little jelly got beat up going back into the box.
Yeah, that's true.
So, and I say #relatable not as a derogatory, but like, it's very much, this is how you felt going through certain things, and then other people look at it and go, oh, I've had that experience, oh.
Like, a lot of, like, even when I was first starting, and honestly, when I was first starting, most of my comics are not happy. They're very either angry or upset or sad or something. And a lot of people seem to resonate with those comics and early experiences. But it's been really nice seeing that as I've, slowly shifted in my life and with experiences and comics to happier things that have been happening. People have also been relating to those experiences, and I'm not by myself here.
I can imagine that's definitely comforting, knowing that as you're communicating these things you've gone through, that when they happened, they were isolated, sometimes isolating experiences, but being able to share them with a broader group of people and having people go, yeah, I went through that as well. I can imagine that's kind of comforting. Like, it's never happy that other people went through bad shit, but it's comforting knowing that you're not the only one who had to, and other people managed to get through it.
Yeah, it's like, this happened, but it's not the end of the world, and if it's not the end of the world, then I can get back up and go again.
You can get back up and eat that horse.
And I kind of hope that that's kind of what my comic does for other people who maybe aren't as open to communicating, because I know some people are like nervous about engaging in online spaces or whatever. Maybe they can see my comics while they're experiencing things and be like, yeah, I've gone through that too, and they won't feel alone.
No, that's fair. That's definitely fair.
Yeah.
So, I did want to ask, you do have other work that you do outside of the comics that you're doing right now, but would you ever want to turn doing art into a full-time thing that you dedicate most of your time to?
Absolutely.
Absolutely, like no hesitation whatsoever, just yes.
Yeah, I would love to do that. It still feels like weird for me to say, because it was always something that was shut down when I was younger, but I have always wanted to do something artistic as a job, like whether that's animation or making songs or making comics like I'm doing now. I've always wanted to do something artistic where I can express myself or some other idea, and I would love to do that. That would be incredible. Currently, it's not there, but I have a Patreon, and it helps with, covering some bills and stuff, so that's been nice.
I'd imagine so. Red Joker in my chat is joking, like, Suris is artist hunting. Red Joker, I don't have the money to artist hunt right now. I don't have the funds to do that. But I do like it when they are able to eat.
Yep.
Being able to eat and afford bills is a good thing. It is. It said yet. Okay, Reg, the closest thing to that is that Brooke did the thumbnail for this episode that's going to be going up on YouTube. Is the closest I could get right now. Jesus Christ. I guess that means that Goku saying, "Oh my God, hi Brooke, I love your comics."
Thank you.
I guess since you did mention you have that the storybook style, I guess you could probably start a YouTube channel where you did storybook type of stuff with your avatar, just kind of like doing quick and dirty animations, talking about your lived experiences and kind of hyperbolizing them a little bit just so that it's, more digestible and funny to the audience. I imagine that would probably go over really, really well, given how much of a following you already have doing that in comic form.
And I've considered doing that before. It's definitely not something off the table. One of the appeals of doing something like that is that I'm not as limited, because I've discussed this with some of my friends before, but the panel type comics can be extremely limiting. There are stories that I've wanted to tell since I've started that I have just felt unable to tell because telling them would require many pages.
Which is something that doing an animated series or doing the longer form content you were mentioning before, the episodic style, would lend itself to more.
Yeah, exactly. Just currently, some of my stories are just not something that I can talk about, really, for one reason or another, usually because of this length, and doing it in a simple animation style or longer form serialized comics would make it just so much more accessible.
Well, if you do end up starting that channel, I know that I will definitely, probably, more than likely, be trying to shout you out and see what I can do in terms of helping you get it off the ground. So anything you need, if that's something that you end up wanting to do, just let me know and I'll see what I can do to help.
Much appreciated.
So the next question that I have, I think this one's basically already been answered just through context, but do you have any experience in the art industry as a whole outside of your current independent work that you do right now? Or has it literally just been all independent work?
It's all been independent. Every time that I've made something, it's always just been for me first. And if people liked it, then I kind of consider it something that I share with them. But I haven't ever worked for anybody or done anything like that. No,
that's fair. I would imagine that that would be one of the reasons why you still enjoy your work as much as you do, because you haven't had the soul sucked out of it yet by a greedy corporation with, I don't know, mouse ears.
Yeah, that's fair. That's fair.
But speaking of art stuff, out of curiosity, would you say that when you're looking at art, do you get more attracted to the style of particular artwork or the ideas behind that style? So for instance, the Cal art style, the style itself, a lot of people don't like for one reason or another, but the idea behind it is make animations, get them out quickly, and still be very visually appealing while you're doing that. Do you tend to lean more on liking something because of the style, how it looks, or liking something because of the methodology behind how it was created?
I would say for me, when I'm looking at I would say I separate it kind of. I will like a piece of art based on what's intended for it and the message or whatever. But if I'm talking about art that's being used to create a larger piece of media, like comics, animation, or whatever, I tend to judge an art style more on its versatility. What can you do with it? If it's a very limiting art style where it's I can't really do certain facial expressions if I do, because it will look really unnatural. I think that, that's not necessarily a great thing. But the more versatile it is, the better it's going to be for those types of media. So that tends to be how I judge it. And I've just found that like the Cal Arts style sort of thing that I do tends to be fairly versatile because you can just bend the rules pretty easily.
Well, because there's not a whole lot of detail in it to begin with, so you can do things like add emphasis on a scene merely by adding in details and shading that weren't there before, because now it'll stand out a whole lot.
Yeah, exactly. And like I haven't done this before in like a comic, but in other piece of art I've done this. If I want to like have it where like you really notice the mouth or whatever, I can even like add lines outside of the bounds of the face, sort of like Rick and Morty or whatever. And then it's got like extra expression to it, so that it's just, you know, it adds an extra depth to it. That's just the way that I see it, though.
Fair. That Fluffy B, one of my chat goes, going from Cal Arts to JoJo style to really drive home the intensity of a scene.
That's true, yeah.
I mean, it's kind of a thing that, like, SpongeBob got famous for, was bouncing to those hyper detailed close-ups of things, usually the gross-out close-ups. Like, that just became a signatory of that style after a while.
Also, The Amazing World of Gumball, given its Cal Arts, and does the exact same thing.
Yep. I'm not gonna lie, I always enjoyed Gumball's style of juxtaposing the cartoon characters onto just real-life, sometimes dramatically shaded environments for even the most mundane of scenes.
Mm-hmm.
Sherry just goes, "Oh, gee, Rick, that's a lot of estrogen."
I wish I had a good Rick impression.
Shut the fuck up, Morty. I can't think of what he would say to that other than just like, it's weird just imagining like a trans Rick for a second there. Like, what would he say to a family doing that? Shut the fuck up. I'm gonna be the prettiest girl. I'm gonna beat all of you in a fucking beauty contest. Burp.
Oh my goodness. Just I didn't know I needed this.
You're an artist. You can bring it to life. If somebody in my chat doesn't end up doing that themselves, Nakiri just goes, "I turned myself into a girl, Morty." I'm Girl Rick. Jesus Christ.
Oh my god. I can't stop laughing.
Oh my god.
I've calmed down. I'm good. Water real quick.
That's fair. Hydrate before you dihydrate.
I'm back.
So, I do have to ask a question. When you're out and you meet somebody new, do you tend to talk about being an artist right away, or is that something you kind of keep to yourself at first?
Honestly, I used to talk about it a bit more freely than I do now. Like, used to when I first started making the art and posting it, and I was socially transitioning and stuff, I would like just, when I met somebody, like let's say at work or something for the first time, I would let them know, because it's like, one, I want you to use my pronouns and stuff, even if you didn't think I looked a certain way. And then the other is that, you know, I think it's cool, and maybe it's something we could talk about, you know, art, if you're into art or video games or whatever. So it's like something I do, and it's a conversation topic. I don't talk about it so much anymore, mainly because nowadays people assume that I use she, her pronouns. Like a lot of times people don't know that I'm trans unless I mention it to them or something.
Yeah.
And it's not that, like, most of the time I don't mind them knowing, and I'll eventually tell them, unless they're transphobic, which I do deal with one guy at work who still doesn't know, and I never plan on telling him.
So he's just like, you're worried that he's gonna go like, oh, so what was your name before? Like that kind of shit.
Yeah, exactly. Like, this guy's weird. I won't even get into talking about it, but I don't talk to him about my art, and I don't talk to him about me being trans, because I don't want to deal with that. But then, like, other people who I have told, I'll talk about art, I'll talk about stuff that I'm doing, just, it's fun. I don't know. But yeah, I do. And I don't.
Used to, but now don't as much.
Yeah, it's not like an immediate thing that I just go into.
That's fair. That does beg another question, though. Are there pieces of art that you made maybe years ago that you maybe feel like really disconnected from now? And is there any reason why? Or do you still feel pretty well connected even to your older stuff that you've made?
A lot of my older stuff has the same art style, but I still feel disconnected to it because a lot of my older stuff is associated with animations that I was making. And at the time, my parents were aware of like my social medias and stuff. So it was.
Oh, so you had to keep all that under wraps.
Yeah, I was still presenting masculine and male and stuff. So it was like, I don't look at it very often, but sometimes I do, just because it's like, that's kind of cool. I made that. Oh yeah, that's what I used to sound like. Just stuff like that.
That's fair. I guess the opposite question would be then, is there a piece of art that you've made that you think has been the most fun that you've worked on? The thing you've enjoyed the most out of anything you've made, comics or otherwise?
The most fun thing that I've made, piece of art, was a song. And I made it before I got kicked out, like probably by like 2 months. And it was called Home. And it was about how that I really wanted to leave so that I could start my life and everything. And I really enjoyed making it. I did like, it was a hyper pop song, I'm not gonna lie. It was hyper pop. And I don't know, that was the most fun piece of art I've ever made. I've shown a few people it, but it's not something that I've like publicly released at any point.
You reminded me that I need to actually take I've been taking singing lessons. I need to actually take the song that my vocal coach got finished mixing and actually put it on my channel. Like, I need to stop being a coward about that.
Yeah, do it. That's awesome.
We're definitely a little past the top of the hour, so I do want to ask, are there any final things or final thoughts you want to leave my audience with, or really anybody else who might stumble upon this when this goes up on YouTube? Any things you want to leave them with, or any last words you have for me at all?
I guess for the audience, I know a lot of people have been in a similar experience to things that I've been through and stuff, like in the past. And sometimes it can just feel like every day is exactly the same and you can never get out of that rut. It's kind of like Majora's Mask, it's like it keeps starting over, and no matter what you do, it stays exactly the same.
But you kept the item from that last dungeon, so it changed.
Yeah, small things change, and you can get through this hard time. You can be the person that you want to be. If you're trans, you can transition. If you're not, and you just want to do something really special, it's within your reach. You just have to keep pushing for it. And I believe in you.
Well, honestly, with the amount of people who have stumbled into this stream just now and have told you that you're an inspiration to them, and the amount that are probably going to be stumbling onto this when it goes up on YouTube, hopefully they'll take that to heart. I've tried to give a similar message to people in my audience, basically going, hey, if there's something you've been wanting to do, just do it. Like, the only thing that stops you is yourself. And that's kind of one of the hardest things I think people can't get past a lot, is that they think there's a billion things that are in the way, when half the time, if it's like learning a new skill, or watching a new show, or even something like taking the first steps to transitioning, they just don't realize that their brain is probably their worst enemy there.
Yeah. And, sometimes there are external factors that are stopping you from doing it, but you can figure it out. It's still possible to get through that.
Well, with that said, I did want to say thank you very much for coming on. I really appreciate you lending your time to hop on here. And if you need anything, like I said, just please feel free to drop me a line anytime if there's anything you need.
Thank you so much. I've had a blast on here. Thanks everybody for coming and saying hi. Yeah, thank you so much.
Well, I'll make sure that there are links to your socials in the description when this goes up on YouTube. Anybody who is here who has not already followed Brooke, there is a pinned comment that goes directly to her Twitter, and then she has all of her socials linked over there as well. So please check that out, whether you're viewing on Twitch or whether you end up viewing on YouTube later. Either way, and again, thank you so much for hopping on, Brooke. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you too. Have a nice stream.